As people, we're driven by different desires. It could be money, fame, love, music, survival, or even technology. And often, we may fall into the trap of being obsessed with our desires that we fail to consider the consequences of our actions.
You a doctor?
I am a doctor. You're gonna run. Do it now.
What did you do to yourself, Doctor?
I wish I knew.
Hello, heroes, and welcome back to Hero's Shadow, where we take a deep dive into our favorite heroes' minds. If it's your first time here, keep your minds open, because our discussion takes us into a topic that questions a very critical subject that affects us all. Being born with a deadly disease was already traumatizing enough, as it wasn't a good place for a child to be. Having struggled for survival from a young age, Michael Morbius was driven to turn his situation around and help others just like himself to become free of the ailment they all suffered. This passion and fear led to both wonderful and undesired results. As you probably know, some of us are like Michael, not as sick patients, but perhaps as people driven by altruism or the need for survival. People who are ready to do anything to make things work. Through his altruism and the strong need to solve his fatal health problem and that of his best friend Milo, alongside everyone else like them, Michael does the unexpected and eventually discovers that his intended blessing has turned into a curse. And now he must make things right at all costs. Now, while we may be trying to beat the odds and get what we want by all means possible, we may need to ask ourselves a vital question.
Yes. It would be a cure.
At what cost?
Failure to weigh our actions through the lens of logical reasoning may turn out disastrous. For this reason, this video will teach and show us from Michael's story the cost of inconsideration while chasing our passion and seeking solutions, and how we can avoid that mistake before it gets too late. Michael was a young kid with a bright mind and a heart of gold. His beginning story inspires us to remember where his altruistic spirit developed and how he began making decisions that would benefit him and others like him in the long run. If you're passionate about helping people, as Michael was, you may understand that your passion didn't just spring out of nowhere. If you think back, some things have happened that led to the buildup of that passion. One of the deciding moments in his life that started him on the journey to becoming the help people needed was when he saved his best friend's life, Milo, in an unusual way. Dr. Nicholas quickly recognized his talent and presented him with the opportunity to leave the hospital and go to a school in the UK, where his talent would be nurtured and put to good use. This window of opportunity separated him from his friend Milo for a while, but opened up to young Michael the responsibility of studying for a cure. This choice led to the creation of artificial blood, a unique substance that helped to keep the disease's effects minimal. It was a temporary solution, but also, according to the movie, a significant milestone in the medical treatment of blood-borne diseases. At this point in time, Michael was a successful doctor who was still sick and still trying to find the cure for his disease. While his temporary win was being celebrated, Michael was racing against time, making him desperate and willing to go as far as using an experiment involving a mixture of bat and human DNA to find a permanent cure for his ailment. The need to live and save his friend and fellow patients made him obsessed with getting a cure. His experiment with the bat's blood finally worked on a rat. Michael was assured that he could continue pushing the limits and find the cure eventually. And so he proceeds to try the mixture on himself, at this point risking his own life to find a cure for his ailment. But Michael wasn't alone in his experiment. Even though she didn't support his methods, Martine still stuck around to help him, perhaps because of the special romantic feelings she had for him. Milo, also powerfully propelled by his desire to be healthy and strong at all costs, supported him with the resources he needed to carry out the risky and unapproved experiment. Now, in all this, we understand that Michael had nothing but good intentions. He wanted to keep himself, his best friend, and others like them alive. But he failed to consider the cost at which he was doing it. When we refuse to consider every piece of the board while making decisions, we are likely to make sacrifices that we never intended to make. We're likely to pay prices we never expected to pay. And that was precisely what happened to Michael. His experiment led him to become a vampire, revealing that sometimes we may be inspired to make crazy decisions for the greater good, but it's not always the best. Although it passed as a mistake in his case, he still took the risk knowing how uncertain he was about the outcome. This shows us that some ideas may sound bold, but are indeed reckless when adequately considered. Once the experiment began, it could not be reversed. Martine injected the mixture into his system, and soon he began to transform. Michael murdered the men on the ship in cold blood before he could even realize it. And part of what may have triggered his rage was that Martine was knocked unconscious on the floor. Being in this state, he could barely control his actions. His craving for blood kept getting worse each time he got hungry and fed on red blood. With good health came a heavy price. Michael's situation is not entirely unrelatable. We can empathize with the fact that he didn't know the experiment would turn out this bad. Though he knew his method was shady, he didn't expect it to lead to murder and bloodshed. Notwithstanding, we clearly can see that if he had made better choices, he probably wouldn't find himself in that situation. Most of us have had that point in our lives when we realized we could not deny the fact that we could have made better choices. Here, regret and confusion may slip in, causing us to back away from the situation or even do worse. Either way, this realization moment is crucial because it is the point where we receive a second chance at doing things right. Further analysis of the movie shows that Michael now had an opportunity to take care of the situation before it went out of hand. He was arrested and detained in jail for killing a nurse in the hospital. Although he was innocent, he couldn't tell because he was unsure of himself and devastated. He knew he had created a terror, and the only option left now was to fix it.
Injecting yourself with poison.
I brought this into the world. It's up to me to take it out.
This was the reason Michael decided not to share the cure with his best friend Milo when he came asking. Even when he knew Milo would see him as a bad friend or a betrayer, he was more concerned about the dangers involved and the lives he would be putting at stake, all for the cause of creating a cure for bloodborne diseases. This revelation became more prominent in his mind after his first kills on the ship, where he carried out his experiment. Although he didn't mean to harm those men on the ship, he couldn't control himself, so he became a monster in the eyes of the public. However, Milo was hurt and selfish, so he stole the vampire mixture for himself, even though Michael had refused to give it to him earlier. In the guise of a lawyer, he even went on to offer Michael some red blood in the cell where he was kept as bait to get him out. He subtly showed his improved condition by intentionally leaving his walking stick behind after dropping the blood. Michael got out, not in honor of the offer Milo gave, but because he knew he had to stop him from causing people more harm. Milo had already killed the nurse at the hospital.
I know. Do you know what it's like your first time? You have no idea what you're doing. You have no control.
Which led to Michael getting locked up in the first instance because the police thought he was the murderer. At this point, he realized Milo had become a threat and needed to be stopped. Milo proved this continuously by killing random people, then their doctor Nicholas, and eventually Michael's girlfriend Martine. Although he had already made up his mind to kill himself and Milo, his girlfriend's death sparked his exasperation, which was the final catalyst he needed to kill Milo once and for all. Although it didn't have to get to this extent, if Michael had just taken precautions beforehand, he still had to make the sad choice of killing his best friend nonetheless. We may not be vampire doctors trying to find the cure to deadly diseases, but we are, like Michael, people who have desires and are driven by emotion. We all have those decisions we need to make that will make the difference in time to come. Due to Michael's overzealousness, the experiment of the bat and human DNAs took place, and that was the starting point of all the tragic events that took place afterwards. And who knows, he probably wouldn't have had to kill Milo in the end if Milo never became a vampire. A stitch in time saves 9, goes the famous saying, or, in this case, a quick consideration of your actions on a larger scale will save you a lot of unwanted events as you go on in life. If you've enjoyed this content, we invite you to try some exercises discussed in this video for better information retention. Are there actions you're taking now that you need to pause and double check, making sure you're not going overboard in the name of passion? Or you probably want to make a choice, but you're still determining how it will turn out? Share with us in the comment section below and participate.